Hey, we're just doing a little bit of air filter maintenance. I like to take these oil type filters, air filters, whether it's a unifilter or a K&N. I like to have a spare one so that when I service, I can swap them out ready to go right away. I don't have to wait for the water to dry or for the oil to set up a little bit before I use it, and the makes it more convenient. But that's not what this video is about. This video, you're probably here because either you're looking for a used motorcycle or you have purchased one and may be slightly disillusioned or wondering what you should look at. There is always those articles that tell, or these ads that tell you, rideable condition or needs nothing, ready to ride. And that's kind of the inverse of the guy looking for a project that says ran when parked. So you may have purchased, or you may be purchasing and concerned about the condition of the bike. You may have been told that this thing is ready to ride and needs nothing. But like my dad always said, it's used for a reason, and they're selling it for a reason. There's always something that needs to be done to these bikes. Especially if you're like me, I like to maintain my bikes and keep them up. I would not sell a bike in half the way 90% of the bikes are being sold out there anyway. I remember as a young man, my father telling me that, and I'd purchased a bike that was either misadvertised and I believed him, or it was the bike I wanted and that's all I wanted to know. And third, probably me just overlooking things that were self-evident and buying it and finding out I had to put money into it. So let's step outside and take a look at a couple of examples. So here are two motorcycles I have purchased in the last 2 years, and they are two very similar condition motorcycles. Actually, they're same year. This one has a little less mileage. However, they were both advertised in the very same way. Low mileage, perfect condition, needs nothing, ready to ride. That is a concept that is pervaded in a lot of used motorcycle ads, and something you should be very cognizant of. So both of these motorcycles are probably that 85 to 95% the perfect motorcycle you're going to find out there. And I'm not talking about model and make and all that horse crap. So save your typing, guys. This is about the condition of the motorcycle. So no matter if you're buying a dirt bike or a Harley or an adventure motorcycle or a bobber or whatever floats your boat, this is about the advertisement and the condition and what you will receive for a motorcycle that is quote unquote ready to ride and needs nothing. So let's look at the approach that these two sellers took with the needs nothing ready to ride concept. Let's go with the first bike I purchased a couple of years ago. This was owned by an older gentleman in his 70s. Purchased his, quote unquote last bike and was selling it. And he tried to maintain it very well. And for all intents and purposes, he tried to do as best he could, but at least he changed the oil. He said he did it every season. So before we get into that, this is what I got from him. I got the two set of keys. I got a stack of receipts. I got the briefcase from Triumph. I got two sets of keys, and I got a Haynes manual. These are all excellent indicators that this bike was super well maintained. Yeah, sorta. He changed the oil and changed the spark plugs every season. So in Arizona, we don't really have a riding season. I guess if you lay off for the summer or something like that, let's give that to him. But he overchanged the plugs, which is great. That's, you know, wasted his money, but that's fine with me. He changed the oil. If he did that once a year, every year, the bike had 7,000 miles on it, was 5 years old, so he over changed the oil, which is perfect. He did have a K&N air filter in there, which he thought you'd put in, and he read the box and said it'll last 100,000 miles. It's not the case. You want to clean these every time you change your oil or do a service to the bike. The chain and sprockets, he must have just tightened them till they were tight. Even though he had all these manuals, the owner's manual, the Haynes manual, he over tightened the chain to the point where in 7,000 miles it had worn out the sprockets to a certain extent, but more to that, it had stretched the chain so much that it was bound up in areas. So I had to change the sprockets. I had to switch out the chain. I added another K&N air filter just because, like I said before, I like to have a spare one. That's not part of this cost, so I had to do that. I did service the oil and filter in it just because that's the baseline I like to take. But people don't understand what the shelf life of motorcycles are. There's things like antifreeze. Just because the thing has only got 2,000 miles on it, that has a shelf life and needs to be changed out. Most motorcycle manuals are probably about 5 years, something like that, with no matter what the mileage. Brake fluid on this bike I had to change because it looked like darker than coffee. It was really bad. It was the original stuff. So I had to get that out. That's pretty cheap. I can do it myself. Most of the stuff I can do myself. I did swap out the tires. He thought that tires on motorcycles were like the ones on your car, that they get 50, 60,000 miles. They last somewhere around 10 years. Not sure about that. However, what he doesn't understand is these things time out. They were, at the time, they were 5 years old. They were hard as a brick. You could tell that by riding around. They were just, they had to be swapped out, and they don't last 50 or 60,000 miles. The stock tires on these, I don't want to get into a discussion about tires. However, they were worn out. They were less than a millimeter of tread on there, and he didn't even know about checking the tread or whatever. So although he did, and I think in his most honest way, thought that the bike was in good mechanical shape, it was mostly an opinion on how new it was and what the condition of the bike was. The condition of this bike, cosmetically, even at this juncture, is probably in that 90 percentile. There may be one little chip here or there. The cases are a little bit rubbed up, and that's mostly from me. But really, cosmetically, the bike was in really good shape. But it probably took me about $400 or so to get this thing into what I would consider rideable shape. The second set of tires that I put on this, I checked the wheel bearings, and if a bike sits for a long time, you're probably going to have at least one wheel bearing that goes out. This one had one bad wheel bearing in the front and one wheel bearing in the back, so you're changing them all out. So if these bikes are sitting, you've got timeouts on fluids, you've got timeouts on tires, and you've got timeouts. Not necessarily every bike you're going to find that, but when I go on to the next one, you'll see that it's repetitive, that the wheel bearings have an issue if this bike's sitting quite a bit. So this is the second bike I purchased in the past couple of years, actually fairly recently. This was owned by an adult, let's say, a woman in her late 30s, early 40s. She purchased it brand new. Both of these bikes were original owners. That's one of the main things I like to look for, is a one-owner bike. That first owner is probably better off to take better care of it most of the time, because they've made the biggest investment in it. But this one was owned by a nice lady, very intelligent. She seemed to have a good idea of what was going on with the bike. When I came in, she said, yeah, I know the tires need to be changed. We did change the oil, and I checked that. It was pretty self-evident. But she didn't know that, you know, the brake fluid needed to be changed. The antifreeze, I think, is in good shape. It's a task to do that on this bike, but it did need new rubber. And when I just changed the rubber on it, I'm a little bit concerned about the wheel bearings. I'm probably going to take them off in about probably another 500 or 1,000 miles and just check them. They just felt a little bit crusty. I cleaned them up and everything, but I think they might be okay. Belt needed to be adjusted, but the only thing I got with this motorcycle were 2 sets of keys, and even that's unusual. Usually they just give you whatever key they're using and they've lost the other one. It took her some digging around to find the second one, but I really wanted to get that back. But again, this bike was cosmetically, for the most part, probably in that 95 percentile. There's not a chip or a real mark on this bike anywhere. But mechanically, there were things, because it sat around, that needed to be done. So let's walk around both of these bikes and just take a look at them cosmetically. Let's start with the first bike I bought, and I've had this for a couple of years, so I've put a few blemishes on it myself. However, you really want to take a look at probably the tank, and that's kind of the part that everybody their eyes are drawn to, at least on some of these classic bikes, is how does that look? And this one, like I said, this one was probably, when I purchased it, in that 95 percentile range. The chrome on the wheels and on the pipes is really good. And when you're looking over cosmetically, you want to really start picking apart mechanical things. When you're down here looking at the chain, looking at the brake fluid inspection windows, pop off that oil level indicator and see what that oil looks like. Make sure that all the lights are working, that kind of stuff. And this one has started because I really squeeze the bike, especially this one. I'm riding off-road. Like I said, when I'm standing up, I squeeze the bike, and it does put a little bit of patina, let's say, on that one cover there, the sprocket cover. But even the seat on this thing was in super nice shape. So really, the guy waxed it and cleaned it and kept it in his epoxy floored garage, and cosmetically this bike was in real good shape, so nothing to do there. Let's take a look at bike number 2. This bike was equally, well, I don't want to say equally. If that one was 95%, this was 85 to 90% cosmetically. The bike has no paint chips in it. I don't know if that's a powder coating, but the crinkle finish on the motor isn't peeling off. The rims were in really good shape. The chrome on the pipes, these are aftermarket pipes, and the chrome was really good. There is, however, a little ding right there. You want to make sure that everything is adjusted properly. That's the other thing on both of these bikes. They had the cables, the clutch cables were never lubricated, so you have to pop those off and make sure. These Scouts, I believe the 2015s and 2016s, have a clutch cable issue, so that's something like that. When you research, you want to find out what these issues are and find out if they've been addressed. So you definitely want to lube this one up. Now, the bags and seat, one of the issues with these early Indians that came with this saddle color leather is that they do age, patina, and fade over time, especially if you don't keep up with them, to the point where Indian had a refinishing kit for them. These were for the bags that they are, and the issues that they have are in really good shape. So these bags, when I got them, were dusty, dry, and needed some care. So I found, well, I found a good shoe polish that matched this and kind of took away some of the little blemishes. I first put on some saddle soap, washed them down, and then I put on the shoe polish and took care of the scratches and stuff, and then put in a leather protectant. It was actually boot protectant, which I figured if it's outside and it's going to get dust and rain, we don't get much rain here in Arizona, but if it's going to get dust and rain on it, that would probably be a good thing. It was a boot leather conditioner, so put that on the bags, and also did that to the seat. And I don't know if you can see, but right around here there's a little bit of checking. Now it's colored from what I did, but it does pop back up again. That doesn't bother me so much, and I'll probably leave this seat on. I did find a seat on eBay, brand new Indian OEM seat, same exact one, for about 50 bucks. And on to buy it from Indian, they're about 400 or 500 bucks. So that was a score, and I may or may not use it. Like I said, this doesn't really bother me too much. If I go to sell it, I can pop it on there and it will look very good in that, probably 80 to 95 percentile if I go to sell it cosmetically. As I mentioned early in the video, there's probably a couple of different people looking at this video for whatever information or experience that I've had anyway. Really, you're on top of the purchase price, which I purchased both of these bikes knowing what I knew when I got there. I was able to negotiate a fair price. And I'm not trying to rip somebody off, but I'm trying to negotiate a fair price for me, because both of these and similar bikes on the internet are listed as needs nothing, ready to go. So they're asking top dollar for them, and you kind of have to pull that back. And they were actually asking a fair price for a perfect bike, but with a little bit of professional education, if you will. I don't know if that's probably the right word, but in a kind way, say this is what I'm looking at. Both of these bikes cost me around just under 400 bucks to get road ready and go. This one here still has a couple of issues. Like I said, I need to get the radiator fluid checked, and it's got one weeping fork seal. It doesn't do it all the time. One seal was replaced under warranty. So this one from sitting, and that's the other thing about bikes that sit, fork seals can be an issue if they especially just sit in one place for a long time. You go to move it, either dust gets down in that seal, and sometimes those seals can be stuck so bad that they rip. So I may have to pull that off and put a new seal in. I'm going to try the Motion Pro fork seal cleaner on it before I do anything else. Anyway, both of these bikes have cost me around 400 bucks to get what I consider to be needs nothing, perfect condition for me. So that's one of the things that you can use when you're there. If you go in there, have a checklist of things that you are concerned about, and you can look on the internet for things that you should look at for used bikes. Go in there armed with that, not armed, but go in there with that knowledge, and then kind of make an assessment whether you can do it yourself or if it's at a dealership. Cost me 400 bucks at a dealership. It will probably be 1,000 or more to get these things road ready. So you can kind of use that in your negotiation with a person and educate them that, hey, I'm not a bike flipper, and maybe you are, but if you're a bike flipper, you're not watching this video. If you're purchasing a motorcycle, especially if you are doing this early on for the first time, or it's your first couple of bikes or first time you've been into new bikes and this is the first time you're buying used bikes, educate the person, hey, I'm not flipping this bike. I'm going to own it for a few years. I'm going to take care of it. However, these are the 5 issues that I see, and it's going to cost me some money to do that. And you can kind of pull that asking price back. So don't get me wrong, both of these bikes were excellent purchases. The people that were selling them were advertising them in the best possible knowledge that they had. probably, you know, misinformed knowledge. However, like I said, if you go into this and you're educated and you educate yourself, you'll have a better purchasing experience after the purchase. You'll know what you've got to do, because you're not going to buy a bike anywhere and be able to ride it on down the road. Even at the dealership, to cover the warranty, you're going to end up having to spend $400 or $300 or whatever the dealerships get for that first service. Some people I know negotiate that in, but that's not as possible today as it used to be. So I hope I've helped you out a little bit. I hope I've helped you before the purchase, or helped you look at what you need to do to your bike after the purchase. These are great bikes. Right now especially is a good time to maybe get away from the dealerships and their crazy add-ons and things like that, and the after the sale costs that they're always not honest about. However, used is a good option. They don't have those costs, but there are some things that are not necessarily intentionally hidden, but they are hidden, and you need to know what they are. So like I said, I hope I helped. I appreciate you watching. Adios.